Frequency change approved.
Kennedy Tower, Experimental Alpha Sierra, Delta Kilo Sierra, continue, west departure. Kennedy Tower, Experimental Alpha Sierra, Delta Kilo Sierra, frequency change. New York Center, Experimental Alpha Sierra, Delta Kilo Sierra, is type Experimental Dark Star, 4 miles northwest of Kennedy, 6,000 feet. Request flight following.
Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra New York Center. Squawk 0246.
Squawk 0246, Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra.
Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra radar contact 4 miles southeast of 6 November 7, 13,900 feet. Altimeter 29.902.
Roger, Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra.
Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra contact New York Center on 118.975. Good day.
118.975, Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra. Goodbye. New York Center, Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra, flight level 225.
Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra New York Center radar contact continue. New York Center Endeavor 4 Niner Tree Niner Heavy 6,900 feet. Endeavor 4 Niner Tree Niner Heavy New York Center altimeter 29.902 radar contact continue to Apple. Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra contact New York Center on 124.625. Good day. United 1353 Heavy contact New York approach on 128.55. Good day.
124.625, Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra. Goodbye. New York Center, Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra, flight level 315.
Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra New York Center radar contact continue. Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra contact New York Center on 135.45. Good day.
Going to 135.45, Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra. New York Center, Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra, flight level 765.
Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra New York Center radar contact continue. Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra contact New York Center on 132.5. Good day. Cessna 1 Delta Echo contact center on 132.525. Good day.
132.5, Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra. Goodbye. New York Center, Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra, flight level 1345.
Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra New York Center radar contact continue. Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra contact Tahiti Center on 126.7. Good day.
126.7 Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra. Goodbye. Tahiti Center Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra Flight Level 1345.
Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra Tahiti Center radar contact continue. Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra contact Tahiti approach on 121.3. Good day.
Going to 121.3 Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra. Tahiti approach Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra Flight Level 950.
Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra Tahiti approach radar contact continue.
Tower Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra is 3 miles southeast flight level 320 with Mike to land.
Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra Tower. Altimeter 29.92 wind calm, fly right downwind runway 22. Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra acknowledge last transmission.
Make right downwind runway 22 Experimental Delta Kilo Sierra. 8.1 experimental Delta Kilo Sierra. Goodbye. Tahiti ground experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra request taxi to parking.
Experimental Alpha Sierra Delta Kilo Sierra taxi to general aviation parking via taxiway Golf Lima Bravo Sierra cross runway 04 November.
Taxiing to general aviation parking via taxiway Golf Lima Bravo Sierra cross runway 04 November experimental Delta Kilo Sierra.